Welcome everyone to another Wonderbeard video. Today we're going to be talking about my top 5 grievances with World of Warcraft. So going to be going a little bit negative today, but before I get into that completely, I do want to say I think the state of WoW is in a really good place. Um, lot of good here, but I did run into a couple things that were pretty annoying that I wanted to kind of call out and maybe surface these things that maybe we can get them fixed in the future so that they aren't quite so annoying going forward. So I'm going to do my best to be in negative, grumpy Wonderbeard mode for the rest of this video and uh, try to air some grievances. So let's hop right into it. So number 5 on the list. And I will say some of these early ones are a little bit nitpicky, but I will say the surge pricing quest in the Undermine that happens every hour on the 30 minutes. It just feels really bad if you're not in the first 10 uh, to get your thing done and kind of finish that surge pricing because you got to wait to at least the 50 to get the rare um, setting, and then epic is just way too far out there. Um, I think what I would suggest with this is to bring the rare down to 25 and the epic to 50. Um, I think I've only seen epic maybe once or twice outside of the first couple of weeks of the season. Um, there's just not that many people that are still doing it, and the number I think it's 150 that you have to get to. People just aren't doing that at this state of the expansion in particular. But even early on, uh, it wasn't that easy to get, and just felt really bad to have to wait that long. So that's one thing that obviously after the season we're not going to have surge pricing most likely unless they continue with the driving theme in future seasons. But um, if they were looking for a quick fix in 1 point or 11.1.7, that would be one that I would look to just try to fix and just make it feel a little bit better. You might get a few more people even looking to do more of those just because they would know they could get the rewards and not have to you know spend a bunch of time to only most likely not even hit it. So that's number 5 on my list. Number 4 is the Mythic Plus metas. This is just one that's probably always going to exist, and this is a little bit more on the player base than anything Blizzard could necessarily do here. But I would say the one piece of the metas is the tuning in most of the Mythic Pluses is tuned around the metas. So if you're in a group that doesn't have a lot of metas or any metas, like the group that I'm in, we don't have anyone that I watched MDI today, and none of the classes and specs that were in that today are in the 5 that are in my guild that run uh, are kind of a couple nights a week. Mythic Pluses were obviously a casual guild. We don't play tons and tons of hours, so we play the class and spec that we like, and we don't switch a bunch. We just don't. We're all older adults, so we don't have the time to become masters on multiple specs over and over again. So um, we we have a very hard time timing very many keys until you get later in the season. Um, last couple weeks we've been able to do tens relatively easily, and we've got the odd character that um, will for one odd character, odd person in our guild that will kind of get up to 12s or 13s, but that's about as high as they ever kind of get, and those are top couple players in our guild. So I think a little bit more balance in the dungeons. I don't know how you achieve this one real easy. Like I said, um, there's the pug element where it's just hard to get into, um, you know, pug run if you're not a meta. Um, so there's that angle that I just don't think there's a lot you can do with. And then there's the dungeons are just hard, and that's partly why you're not able to get in those runs. Is the dungeons are hard if you don't have those specific defenses and skips and all that other stuff that you can do to make them easier. Um, so I think maybe balancing a little bit more, around the specs and trying to avoid some of the stuff where, um, certain classes and specs are just so good at dungeons. So not not a lot in my way of solutions there. I'm not a huge Mythic Plus person, but I was gonna try to do more this season, and I did more, way more than I did last season. I'm a BM Hunter main, and that's basically all I play. And BM Hunter was awful last season, so I don't even think I stepped in a Mythic Plus dungeon. This season, I've done you know a couple a week for most of the season, um, but only in the last probably month or so have we been able to even finish tens, and just the last 2 weeks have I been able to time them. Um, I don't even have all of them timed still, so it just makes it really hard if you don't have a group that's mostly metas. If you're a group like mine that has none, you're gonna struggle. Or my group's a prop pally, resto druid, shadow priest, me as a BM hunter, and then mage that's frost, unless he brings his marksmanship hunter, but his main's a frost mage. So um, a couple of those classes are not you know bad at a mythic plus. Some of them are good, but the meta from what I watched most of today is your uh, demon hunter tank, your disc priest or resto shaman, um, and then your DPS is either fire or arcane mage. Depending on the dungeon, it's a warlock, and then boomkin, druid, and then usually a death knight, either frost or unholy. Just kind of depends on which dungeon, but that's kind of where your meta lives for the most part. So um, that's my grievance there for Mythic Plus meta comps. So hopefully we can make those less painful to not be in that group. All right, number 3 on the list. So we're going into delves here. So Tank Bran is my grievance here, and really, Tank Bran only comes into play for a couple classes. Specifically, the one that I've had the most issue with in the higher delves has been my mage, and I tend to play Frost Mage. Um, so I basically have to run the um, healer brand, and that's fine up until the final boss. But the final boss typically can't be slowed or stunned or anything. So they are an epic fight, and I find myself more often than not. I'm thinking about the side street sleuths one. Like I'm doing vanilla WoW, jumping over the ledge to just try to let cooldowns come back so I can do extra damage, and just kind of cycling through that to just try to keep them back. Where this feels like what Tank Brand was made for. Um, all I want Brand to do is be able to sit there and keep the boss's attention and not insta die. And that's basically what happens. Is if you try the Tank Brand, he insta dies, and you're not really getting anything out of him. I think they made changes early on, because he was doing a lot of damage, and the healers were just healing him, and that's all they were doing, um, and just letting Bran kill the dungeon. And I think, I think that makes sense to fix that, but I think you you need different levels of Bran for which classes he's tanking for. So if he's tanking for a DPS, he doesn't need to do DPS. He just needs to hold aggro and not die. If he's tanking for a healer, maybe he does a little more damage, but he takes more damage. So some sort of sliding scale there based on what the group comp is would help a lot there. Because I don't see much of a use of tank Bran this season, just because he can't stay alive. So that's the number three grievance there. So I got a little delving in there. I'll say number two on my list. This one's probably going to be a little niche, and it's raid groups that have 10 to 12 people in them. So my guild, we've had some attrition, this expansion in particular. So we're typically running 10, 11 people, and Gallywix is the fight we're on now. Heroic Gallywix. We're trying to get AOTC, which is about where we land for the most part. Most seasons we don't typically push Mythic. We don't have those kinds of numbers. But there's phase two of Gallywix where you've just laid the bomb, in the trap, and then you go to Gallywix, and then you get 3 soak circles, and those need to be soaked by at least 3 people. We have wiped on this mechanic many, many times because we're trying to soak it, and a little bit here is strategy. I can appreciate that, but keep in mind, at least 3 people have to soak this. So you're already eating 9 people up. So if you have one person die, you have to be perfect, or if one person, doesn't do the exact right thing, and you've got someone tanking the boss as well. So they can soak, but it's not quite as easy. But what we find is, we do it by groups. So we have 3 people in each group, and then 4 in the first group. But what happens is we'll find a lot of times, the group that's on the right soaking, 2 of them will get the soak circle. So one of them has to move. So then, on the fly, you got to figure out, okay, someone's got to move over to the right. And, it's not even so much the point that could be solved with better gameplay. It's more of, if you have 15 or 20 members, that is a complete non-thought. Like, there is no calculus that you have to do other than saying group 4 go right, group 3 go middle, group 2 go left, and group 1 do whatever the hell you want, because we don't have to worry about it because we got enough people that we can just do that. And that's the biggest problem with this, is it's so punishing on small groups, to have less people. Now, I will recognize there are the flip sides where sometimes having more players is a detriment, but this season that's not really the case very often. In Dragonflight, Murder still, blanking on the boss's name right now, but there was one in there that it was so much easier with less people because you weren't getting, all the tornadoes and everything to come out of him. But this season it has definitely been a drain to have less people. Muggsy's kind of in the same boat. If you don't have enough people to soak those circles, or do the jails, that's a struggle as well. So I think just a little bit less punishing on the raids that have less people would be a welcome change, in my opinion. I just, figuring out how to, if you're 15 or less, then you only need 2 people to soak instead of the 3. Something like that, just to make it a little more doable. We've gotten past that thing a couple times, but it just makes progression so much harder because we're wiping to that mechanic more often than we're getting past it. So it just made progression really slow. And, we're resorting to this Sunday when we do our raid uh, of going out and getting pugs, trying to get people just to come on their alts, even if they aren't, geared or that good. We just need a number to kind of make it through. So that is number two on the grievances list. So last but not least, and I will say this one definitely grinds my gears, and it's the crafting system in regards to sparks, and specifically there's two angles to this, and they're kind of related, but specifically around if you craft something and you make a mistake, there is no fixing it. You are just out for 2 weeks until you can get another spark, and you just have one less crafted item for the season, and that is just a terrible feeling, to the point where I wanted to stop playing the game because I was so upset that I miscrafted an item. And I'll explain. It's actually happened to me multiple times this season, but I'll explain the specific case that makes it even worse, and that's leatherworking. So I am a leather worker, and I will probably not be a main leather worker going forward for this very reason. Leatherworking is the only profession that has two separate armor specs in its tree, and so you have to be uber careful not to make the wrong piece. And as a mail wearer, as a hunter, that one is second in the list. Leather is first in the list. So I have multiple times made leather pieces instead of the mail piece. Um, and that just is a terrible thing to have happen. And it's not really feasible for that to happen if you use the like if you're sending it to someone else. So like if my hunter wasn't a leather worker and say my mage was a leather worker, um, if I'm sending that craft to the mage, there's almost no chance. I mean, there's still a possibility I could, type the wrong thing, but if you're going through and picking armor and then mail and like you're already in your like it's very obvious where you're at. Um, so I I just think there's two suggestions I have. First is take take mail crafting out of leatherworking and either create a new profession or put it with something else. But um, it's too easy to make a mistake if that is your profession. Um, and the other thing that I think the easier fix and the one that I would most like to see is give us a way to get our spark back. And what I mean by this is most people aren't going to, like, you're going to craft your piece and you're going to want to use it. Um, so you're not going to recraft it for the most part. Um, if you're changing specs or something like that, like, going from a healer to a DPS, maybe you would do something like that. Probably not even still. Um, but I think, the angle that they could take with this is, Sparks have been around a couple expansions now. Enchanters have figured out how to reverse engineer, or you're engineering there. I just said engineering. So, but I think enchanting needs something. So that's kind of why I'm leaning towards enchanting. Enchanters have figured a way how to crack the spark out. And, maybe it's something that happens once every 2 weeks and you get a currency or something for it. So people aren't able to do it consistently. And, I'm sure they're concerned about race to world first in there a little bit. So, maybe you could just take, keep it a couple weeks into the season, once the race is over or most of the way over. Um, But I think that would make a really big difference in the crafting and make it so you don't feel it. This season or this expansion, I'll just kind of list the things I've done. So on my hunter, I crafted 675 leather boots instead of mail boots, and I think it was the start of 11.5 or maybe just before, but it was the patch where it was a really bad release and there were tons of bugs. And so I was constantly getting error messages pop up. So I wasn't as in tune to what I was doing. So there's a little bit on me of I probably should have just not crafted with all those issues going on, but you know, that contributed to not as focused because of so many errors happening in the system. But I crafted those boots and instantly regretted it. And not even an hour later, our raid leader had me craft a weapon for him, and it was the wrong weapon. It was a strength weapon and one-hander instead of a intellect one-hander. So he lost out on a spark there as well. At the very beginning of the expansion, I put 25 points into the leather tree instead of the mail tree, just because I forgot that they were two separate tabs and the two separate armor trees. So that was 25 not talent points, but the profession points that I just had to overcome early on in the expansion when my guild would needed me to be able to craft mail pieces for people in the guild, and I was behind. I got caught up eventually, so it wasn't the end of the world, but it really made for a rough start to the season. Um, I mentioned the raid leader with the weapon. I did basically the same thing with my rogue of crafting one-hander that didn't have agility on it. It was just stamina. Um, and as an alt, that was even worse, just because I had such a harder time getting crests on that character. So then to craft that, and because I'm not playing it very often, so to craft that and then not even be able to use it, that stung. I actually put the character down because um, it just felt so bad trying to play that. So I think this is the biggest one that I would really like to see something change here. Like I said, engineering, enchanting, something. Give them a quest, or a chain of quests that gives them the ability to learn how to take a spark out. And if it's not even taking a spark out because of the coding involved in that, you could always do something where um, they've got the opportunity to um, do like create some item that can only go on top of an existing spark, something like that to kind of make it a little bit easier to fix an error. Because it really shouldn't be something that people are doing very often. Like I said, on one character I messed up one time a season. Um, so I just needed one to fix a problem, and that would have been much better, and I would have felt a lot better about continuing to play and not wanted to just go off and not log into my character. So hopefully Blizzard will look at that and see what they can do to fix that. But that is my number one WoW grievance currently in the game. Thanks everyone for tuning in. We still got a little bit more season 2 to do, but that'll probably be an upcoming video, just kind of my season 2 recap. If you haven't checked it out yet, I did a season 1 recap, so definitely check that out and let me know what you think of my thoughts on season 1, and let me know in the comments here about my grievances. If you think I just need to get good, or if you agree with some of these, definitely let me know. I will catch you in the next video. Goodbye.